Let's go. Big W. Big W for the New York Jets. Let's go. Overall, a good win from the New York Jets. I'm just going to give my post-game reactions here. First off, Breece Hall. Oh my God. Breece Hall is a beast. He's finally back. He had 177 yards. He had a touchdown on the ground. He had a 72 yard 2 yard run. He averaged what 7.8 yards per carry. I mean, Brees Hall. Yeah, no, Brees Hall averaged 8 yards per carry on 22 carries, 177 yards, a touchdown, 72-yard run. He had a 17-yard or three receptions for 17 yards as well, 194 total yards on the game, and he scored the only touchdown that the Jets had on offense. Immediately from my post-game reaction, I'll say that the offense in the red zone was super, super sluggish. Something's got to change with the red zone offense. I'll immediately say that. Whether it's the play calling, whether it's, maybe Zach Wilson can't do it in the red zone. Maybe it's run it with Breece Hall in the red zone. Outside of that, shout out to Greg the Leg, by the way. 4 for 4 in field goals, and he was 2 for 2 in PATs. Really good from Greg the Leg. But the run game, man, the run game was phenomenal in this game. 234 yards, 7.3 yards per carry. And I think we had like 10 plus yards for the run on the ground. 32 carries as well. Really, really good ground game, and really good from the interior offensive line as well. A lot of those breakaway plays were from Nick Baldwin, who was at fullback, and on the inside, especially for the right side. Joe Tippmann going to right guard has been really good for the team. Elijah Vera Tucker did go out with an injury. That sucks a lot. Mekhi Becton also had a good game at left tackle as well. However, he was in and out of the game for a good bit. I think he got hurt like twice. Zach Wilson, overall, a solid-ish game. He had the highest amount of completion percentage in his career, 19 for 26. Pretty solid game from there. He also made a good amount of big plays. One to Garrett Wilson for 30 yards. One big play on third down to Tyler Conklin on an in-and-out or a stock O. He did have that interception for Patrick Surtain. That's a jump ball. He's got to lead Garrett Wilson behind. Outside of that, that really killed his passer rating. Outside of that, he was actually pretty solid. I wouldn't put that on him too much. I think the majority of the game was on the run, was on the heels of Breece Hall, who had a phenomenal game. The one thing I will comment about the Jets' offense is that the play out of half, or the play before half, Zach Wilson and the offense, you guys got to clock that. I think that's on Zach Wilson. That's a young quarterback mistake to not get up to the line and get everybody ready for a second hypothetical play, aka a spike. You got to get that field goal out of half to make that game 11-13. Luckily, they did come back on defense and force a turnover. Or not force a turnover, got the ball back on a 3-and-out, and then Breece Hall scored a touchdown. You've got to score there before the half. The defense played pretty well. C.J. Mosley had 13 tackles. We had a few good sacks. Quincy Williams had 2 sacks. Jermaine Johnson had a sack, and Bryce Huff had a sack. Much better showing from the defensive line than the other couple of weeks outside of the Chiefs game. They had a good week there. The defense, a lot of early struggles. I'll say that the screen game and the running game in the beginning of the game in the first quarter was really damaging for the Jets. A lot of big plays were being popped off, a lot of 20-plus plays. But in the second half, the Jets really honed in on the defense, and I think that's because they stopped playing man coverage. They played man a ton in the beginning of the game, and then they went back into their zone. And C.J. Mosley was able to really be a hybrid role as a spy and as that hook zone in the middle of the field. I really liked how the Jets bounced back in the second half. Obviously, the first half didn't go very well. They, I think, allowed like 180 yards and allowed like 90 yards on the ground. I like how they bounced back in the second half, especially forcing a forced fumble at the end of the game where Bryce Huff scooped and scored, and multiple 3-and-outs in the beginning of the third quarter to allow the Jets to get a lead. I really loved the defensive showing in the second half, and I love the adjustment for them. The Broncos, man, they had a tough game. The offense was not the problem in this game. They had 139 yards on the ground, and Russell Wilson had 2 touchdowns in this game as well. I don't think anything was really... I think the receivers are struggling to get open in the second and the third quarter. I think once they backed away from the run game in the third half and wanted to air it out more, obviously Jalen McLaughlin had a really good game, 7.6 yards per carry. He had a touchdown on the game as well. Once they backed off of the intermediate game through like screen passes. So Samaje Perine had a lot of good catches. He had 73 yards, and also Jason McLaughlin had a screen touchdown. Once they backed away from that, they were really hard pressed to find guys open. Jerry Jeudy had 50 yards, but Cortland Sutton only had one catch. Brandon Johnson only had one catch. Marvin Mims only had one catch. They were struggling to really target the sticks. They were really struggling to get deep, and the defensive line was able to really hurt Russell Wilson in the second half, getting more pressure. So overall, I don't think the Broncos offense are to blame here. I think it's the defense, and I think it's the defensive line. The Jets' offensive line isn't very good, and the defensive line outside of Nick Bonito had 2 sacks. Outside of him, they were not getting any run help. There was no run help from the linebackers at all, and the outside of the nose tackle, there were no stops at the line of scrimmage outside of Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. 1 yard gain, but Breece Hall cracked game 8.0 yards per carry. That's on the defensive line. The secondary played pretty well. They did have Patrick Surtain, who had an interception in this game. But Vance Joseph and the defensive coordinator, I don't know where you're at with him on the Broncos side. You're now 1-4. Pretty much all these losses have been on the defense and been because of the defense, and especially in that second half. The Broncos in the second half, their defense is frustrating. Outside of the Bears game, they were able to clamp up the Bears in the second half. But my overall thoughts for the Jets game, very stressful in the end of the game. The Jets have to convert more red zone touchdown opportunities. You have to. You can't kick 4 field goals that are like 30-yard chip shots. And especially when you're in the goal line situation, you've got to either bring it to Breece or you've got to do some play action with Zach Wilson. And you got to throw it up to Allen Lazard. The guy's 6'5". He can get more fade balls. The red zone opportunities have to change. That's the one issue that I think for the Jets offense right now. The running game with Breece Hall getting a full workload, I think will finally unlock the offense a lot and give them a good change of pace. Zach Wilson being more consistent really helps the offense as well. And then on the defense, they do start off a little rough, but I think once the season goes on, the Jets defense will look like the Jets defense of last year, which is like 0 touchdowns through the air. My final thoughts are the Jets played a good game overall. It was a lot closer than the score would say, 31-21. The game was closer at the majority of the game. A lot of fumbles in this game, a very sloppy defense, very sloppy penalty game as well. There were like 15 total penalties. The Jets had a lot of roughing the passer, a lot of holding, illegal contact, and then there was 2 fumbles from Xavier Gibson. There was 2 fumbles from Zach Wilson. There were 3 fumbles, 2 Marvin Mims fumbles, and then a Russell Wilson fumble as well. Overall a sloppy game. Not every game will of course be like that. And overall, good Jets win. We're going into the Eagles next week, and the Eagles have kind of looked beatable in the past couple of weeks. I know the Commanders put up a really good fight against them, and the Rams were able to hold Jalen Hurts to not the best game. Obviously, the tush push gave him a rushing touchdown. But I think that they're beatable. I think that you can game plan around them if you're able to stop the run. Obviously, it's a really hard run game to stop. But if you're able to neutralize the run and you're able to really air it out against them, the Eagles have a really good defensive line. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I don't think it'll be as difficult as the Cowboys game. I think that Zach Wilson's got his foot under him, and Breece Hall now is the full workload. I think the game should be a lot closer than people think. For the future, I want to do a film breakdown for Breece Hall, so stay tuned for that in the middle of the week. And also, if you guys are interested in the 2024 NFL Draft, this week I'm going to update my 2024 NFL Draft board, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But overall, good win. I'm happy about this win, and I'll see you guys in the next video.